All right, welcome back. In this lesson, we're going to learn about alert dialogues. They're ones with built-in support for a whole bunch of buttons, as we can see here. So it's a 0 to up to 3 buttons. They also allow us the opportunity if we want to add a list of items that we can select. So lots of built-in stuff. We can also add a title, message, icon, a whole bunch of things. Very commonly used and very simple to use. So that's where we're going to start. All right, so in the starting code, the way that we've set it up here is we've already set up all the listeners, and the listeners are very nice. They're going to log a message, and they're going to call a method that we've stubbed in for you. So what we're going to be doing is filling in the guts of each one of these methods, right? So we're going to have a few of them to write. Okay, so what are we going to put in there? Well, honestly, this is our first opportunity to use fragments, right, in this course. As we're going to learn in our next unit, fragments are these components that we can reuse that combine elements of both the UI and background code, right? So good stuff. They give you a lot of flexibility. Usually you're going to pay with that flexibility, of course, with a bunch of overhead, right? It turns out, though, that dialog fragments are very similar to just basic old-style dialogues that Android used to have. And dialog fragments are preferred these days, so that's what we're going to use. As far as how we're going to do that, a few different things. We're going to create a new dialog fragment class, right? And actually, immediately we're gonna stub in code to show the fragment, right? Just so we don't forget. And within that, we're going to be overriding onCreateDialog using what's called a builder, right? And then we should note here that we're going to add some buttons. When we do, we're going to have onClick listeners, but instead of being view.onClick listener, they're going to be dialog interface.onClick listener. All right, so let's go to our sample code that we've already loaded up and do that. All right, so first one, like we said, is going to be for the about method. So we're going to fill in this to do right now to show the about. And the way we're going to do that is just go ahead and declare a dialog fragment. Call it what you will. I'll call it like df. It's just going to be used locally. And we're going to make this one be a one that overrides dialog fragment. So we're going to declare it sort of, we're essentially making a class that overrides dialog fragment, but anonymous. We're declaring it all on one line. All right. Go ahead and import dialog fragment. And then before we forget, we're going to show it. The show method takes a couple of parameters. So the first one is the fragment manager. We'll learn about that more in the future. Just for now, get fragment manager. The second one is going to be a tag. You can make it an empty string. We're not going to be using the tags at all, so you could even make it null if you want. All right, sounds good. So what's going to go in here? We are going to override onCreateDialog, this method right here. And what this is it's going to be called whenever we want to create the dialog. It's going to tell us what happens. And right now it says to return super.onCreate. Of course, we don't want to do anything with the super class here. That would just give us an empty dialog fragment. So we want to customize it. So we're going to write our own. All right, how do we do that? Let's go back here to our slides. And we've done this part. Again, what we did here is we created a dialog fragment, custom one that we're going to override, and we showed it, right? So what goes in the guts here? Right? Well, the bulk of it is going to be what's called an AlertDialog builder, right? And so actually builders are used fairly frequently in Android. What we're going to do is we're going to create a builder and then set a whole mess of parameters on it, right? So we're going to set its title, the message. We could set any one of a number of buttons. Later we're going to add items, so on, a whole bunch of things, right? So many more things that you could do. And then when we're done, we're going to call the create method. All right, and that's essentially a factory method that's going to return an actual instance of the dialog and the one that we're going to return from our method. So this is what we're going to be creating, right? So we have a title here about dialogs, and we have a string for that. The icon is one right here that we also have, and then we have our description, right, is here, and then this OK is here, and that's actually a built-in. So Android has support for the string OK, so we might as well use it, right? So let's go write the code. So in here, get rid of the to-do. I'm going to create an instance of AlertDialog.builder. So it's an inner class. Call it what you will. I'll typically call mine builder or something like that. And that's going to be a new alert dialog.builder. And we see it takes a context. Now often we've been writing this, but that wouldn't be the right thing to do here because this is an inner class that we're defining right here. So this is actually the dialog fragment, but we want the activity. So a couple opportunities, or a couple options. You could say take hello dialogs, the name of the outer class, .this, and that would be a perfectly fine option. The other thing that you can do is that anywhere in a class you can call the getActivity method and it will return the current activity, right? So the context for the builder is going to be the activity itself. So that's what we're going to do here. Again, get a couple of options. Ultimately, I'm going to set some options here. So set the builder options. And then I'm going to take the builder and I'm going to say, hey, builder, would you please create an alert dialog for me? Because if we notice, our onCreate dialog needs to return a dialog. So let's go ahead and do that. All right, now if we were to run it, we'd get an empty dialog and we wouldn't be any worse off. But let's actually go in and do some of the interesting things here. So the first thing that we wanted to do was to set our title, right? So about dialogs here. So let's take this. So builder.setTitle, and we have a resource ID for that. So r.string dot, and that's going to be about dialogs. Right. I'm going to go ahead and hit that guy. We also had a message, as we saw, right? So this message right here. So we're often just going to set the message. So builder.setMessage, right, with whatever we want to be telling our user. And again, we'll take a resource ID for that. So r.string dot about description. Great. We can set an icon. Different ways of doing that. I'm just going to do a very simple thing right now, which is to set the icon, and this assumes that we already have one, which we do in our project. So I'm going to do r.drawable dot, and then I have an icon here called dialog alert. All right, I'm using the same naming conventions as I did with menus, only instead of IC_menu, it's IC_dialog. Makes sense. All right, good. So we've got a title, a message, an icon. So all the top stuff here. The only thing remaining is this button. So let's go ahead and try out the button. So the button, this is going to be, and actually we only have one. The OK button we usually call a positive button. So I'm going to set the positive button on this. And what text do I want? So like I said, OK is a built-in string. So normally you'd find it in things like r.string, but the built-in ones are android.r.string dot, and you'll see they have a whole bunch of them. So cancel we'll actually use in a bit. They have ones for yes and no and some sort of common actions. We're just going to grab the OK one for here. All right. And then a listener. Turns out that we could actually make it null for this, since by clicking on it we don't really want it to do anything. It's just going to kind of dismiss the dialog. But just to show you how it works here, we're going to make a new dialog interface dot onClick listener. All right. So again, that's not a view dot onClick listener. So we're going to fully qualify it, and then it has an onClick method. Surprise, surprise, right? We've never seen anything like that before. All we need to do in here is we need to dismiss it, right? So you have an option. You can say dialog, like this parameter that was passed in here, dot dismiss, and that will go ahead and dismiss it. Or actually, if you want to dismiss the fragment instead of the dialog, you can just say dismiss itself, right? And that will dismiss the whole thing. Turns out they work the same as far as I know. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and finish this guy off by putting an extra semicolon and launch my application. All right, emulator's up. Let's check out about dialogues. We click on this guy, and we get a little dialog, icon, title, message, and a button here. We click it. It dismisses the dialog. Looks great. All right. We see right here, again, just catching up the slides here, what we did. So we created a builder with the activity as the context. Again, you could have used the outer class.this, would have worked just fine. We're going to set the message, the title, the icon, and the positive button. And sort of the key thing here is that we need to know to use a dialog interface on Click Listener. All right, nothing magical here. We create it, and life goes on. Okay, so we should know about buttons here. We can typically have up to 3 buttons. So we saw the positive button down here a minute ago, but we can also have a negative button or a neutral button. What are these for? So the neutral, or negative, excuse me, is when the user decides, they didn't really want to do that, right? So this is your typical cancel button. The neutral button one is one that's optional. It's essentially if you want a 3rd button, and they just call it neutral. And then positive is the, okay, I want to go ahead with what I was going to do. All of these versions here you see essentially take strings. There's also versions like we used that take a string resource ID. All right, so sounds good. What I'd like you to do now is to take and write the show exit. So this is the next method that's empty here. And this one is going to be very similar. So we're going to have a message, no icon or title. Don't need them here. But what I want you to do is put in your 3 buttons, and let's describe them before we go any further. So the order is always cancel comes first, right? So cancel is on the left, right? And that's just an Android standard, and we're going to follow it, right? So what do we have? So the first one is our negative one. So again, we can use the Android R string cancel, right? So that the built-in string resource. This one is actually saying, hey, do you want to exit? So the positive button is going to be to exit. And here we'll ask our activity just to finish, right? So that exit is just going to be this string right here. Right, and then what we're going to call the neutral button, our 3rd option right here is to get a toast message, right? And when they click that, we are going to dismiss the dialog, but then you can show a toast. And I honestly don't care what you put in for text. Really does not matter to me at all what you put there. Okay, and we've got strings for everything, so should be pretty straightforward to do. All right, so what I'd like you to do is pause the video right here, go ahead and write it. I'll give you a heads up, there is a solution on the next slide, but I won't show that here. Feel free once you finished to go ahead and look ahead in the slides. Right, so enjoy, nice work, and we'll see you for the next lesson later.